All right, everybody, welcome back. We are diving deep today, and we're tackling something pretty huge.
Yeah.
Something that's got the potential to shake things up, I think, in the world of finance and maybe beyond.
Absolutely.
Bitcoin halving.
Big one.
It is a big one,
Uh,
and we've got some fascinating excerpts here pulled from a document called Metin Yapıştırıldı.
okay.
And, I was reading through this, and I got to say, it's got me thinking, like, what really happens
Right.
when Bitcoin halves?
Yeah.
And why should any of us even care? Like, even if we're not like, diehard crypto investors.
Right. Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to kind of get lost in the weeds with this stuff,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
all the technical jargon.
Yeah.
But actually, when you break it down, the core concept is pretty simple.
Okay, I like simple.
Yeah. So imagine like
Lay it on me.
a gold mine, right? That
Yep.
just keeps producing less and less gold over time.
Okay,
That's kind of what's happening with Bitcoin.
interesting. Okay, so walk me through this. What actually happens during a halving event?
All right. So every 210,000 blocks,
210,000 blocks.
which is a lot of blocks.
It is a lot.
But it works out to roughly every 4 years, okay?
Okay.
The reward that Bitcoin miners get
Yeah.
for verifying transactions, doing all the hard work,
They're the backbone.
they're the backbone, yeah, keeping the network running.
Yeah.
That reward is cut in half.
Straight up in half.
Straight up in half, yep.
Wow.
So it started back in the day, 2009, it was 50 Bitcoin per block.
Wow. That's a lot of Bitcoin.
A lot of Bitcoin.
Especially back then.
Yeah, back then, I mean,
When nobody knew what it was.
who knows, right?
Right.
Then in 2012, it went down to 25 per block.
Okay.
Then 2016, 12 and a half.
Okay, so it's just less and less Bitcoin coming into the system each time this happens?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's the whole point.
Yeah.
This is like a built-in scarcity mechanism.
Right, so it's almost like they planned it,
Yes. From the beginning. Yeah.
That it would just become harder and harder to get.
Exactly. And it's all designed to eventually cap the total supply
Oh, wow.
at 21 million Bitcoin.
So there'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoin.
That's the theory, at least.
Wow, that's pretty wild. So that's why people compare it to like precious metals, right?
Exactly. Like gold.
Yeah.
There's only so much gold in the ground.
Right, and that's part of what makes it valuable.
Exactly. Limited supply.
Makes it valuable.
Yeah.
Okay, and I remember reading in our source, too, that these past halving events,
Yeah.
they've been followed by some pretty wild price swings.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're talking Bitcoin going from like $12
Yeah.
to over $1,150 in 2012.
That's a big jump.
That's huge.
And then from like 650 to almost 20,000 in 2016.
Are you kidding me?
I mean, talk about a roller coaster ride.
That's insane.
Yeah, and we saw another big one in 2020 too.
Yeah.
Went from like 9,000 to a peak of 69,000.
Okay, so clearly something's happening here.
Something's happening.
Yes. But, I mean, obviously these are just like snapshots in time, right?
Of course. Yeah, you got to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah. I mean, it can't just be up, up, up forever.
Right. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No, I mean,
There's going to be some bumps along the way.
it sounds pretty volatile.
Oh, it definitely can be. I mean, those price surges are exciting for sure.
Yeah.
But the market, it tends to correct itself.
Okay.
What's really important is understanding, like, the why.
Yeah, why does this happen?
Why does halving tend to push the price up? And
Yeah.
it really comes back to, Econ 101,
Okay.
supply and demand.
Right?
You're reducing the rate that new Bitcoin is entering the market,
Okay.
but the interest,
Yeah.
the demand that keeps growing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about the miners.
Yeah. The folks on the ground.
Yeah, because they're the ones actually bringing these new Bitcoin
Right.
into existence.
They're doing the work.
So how do they handle these shrinking rewards?
That's a good question, and it really puts the pressure on them
Yeah.
to become more efficient.
So what does that look like?
Well, they got to find ways to cut costs,
Okay.
like investing in better equipment.
So they can mine more efficiently.
Exactly. Or finding cheaper sources of energy.
Right, because energy is a huge part of
A
this.
huge part of it, yeah. If they can't keep up, they risk getting pushed out of the game.
So it's almost like natural selection for Bitcoin miners.
Yeah, you could think
The
of that.
strongest survive.
Survival of the fittest.
But this also makes me think, though, couldn't this lead to like some pretty big environmental concerns?
Yeah.
Especially with the energy consumption.
That's a very valid point, and it's a big debate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, having does kind of force them to become more energy efficient.
Right, they have to stay in the game.
They got to stay profitable, right?
Yeah.
But the sheer scale of Bitcoin mining,
It's massive.
it's huge. It does raise some legitimate concerns
Yeah.
about its environmental impact, and that's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, that's something to watch for
Yeah.
sure.
It'll be interesting to see how the landscape adapts as these rewards.
And keep shrinking.
It keeps shrinking.
Yeah, and we hear a lot about these institutional investors.
Yeah, the big money.
The big money getting into Bitcoin now.
Hmm.
Does that tie into the halving at all?
It definitely does. And, a lot of these institutional investors, they see Bitcoin's limited supply
Right.
and that kind of deflationary nature
Built-in scarcity.
as a potential hedge against inflation, right?
Interesting.
Especially with all the uncertainty in the traditional financial systems these days.
Yeah, makes sense.
And historically, these halving events, they've sparked more interest from these big players.
Really?
Yeah, they recognize the potential impact on
Yeah.
scarcity and therefore value.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's look ahead here.
All right, crystal ball time.
Crystal ball time. 2024 halving.
Yeah.
Right around the corner.
Coming up.
Should we all be like bracing ourselves?
Well, I'd say a bit of caution is always wise.
Yeah.
Especially in the crypto world.
This is true. This is true.
But yeah, if history repeats itself, we're likely to see some increased volatility.
Okay.
The market tends to react pretty strongly.
Both ways.
Both ways, yeah, positively and negatively,
Right.
in the months leading up to and following a halving.
Yeah, that makes sense. But okay, aside from just the price swings,
Right.
what other effects do you think this upcoming halving might have?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I like interesting.
We might see the mining industry go through some pretty significant changes.
Like what?
Maybe more consolidation,
Okay.
maybe even some, innovative new approaches to mining come out of this.
Wow, because they're going to have to innovate to keep
They're
up.
going to have to adapt.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see even more institutional adoption.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
which could further solidify, Bitcoin's place in the global financial landscape.
It really does feel like we're on the verge of something big here.
It's an exciting time.
It is.
For sure.
And it's like, even for those of us who aren't like directly invested in Bitcoin,
Yeah,
it's kind of crucial to understand what this all means.
absolutely. I mean, it's not just about the price of Bitcoin.
Right.
It's bigger than that.
Yeah.
It raises these fundamental questions about scarcity, value, and the future of money itself.
That's deep.
It's
Yeah.
deep. Yeah. I mean, could a system built on this kind of controlled scarcity like Bitcoin
Yeah.
become a bigger part of the global economy? I don't know.
That's a big question.
It's something to think about for sure.
Definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for walking us through all of this.
My pleasure.
It's been really insightful. And to all our listeners out there,
Yeah.
I really encourage you to keep exploring this topic.
Absolutely.
There's so much more to uncover.
Yeah.
Who knows what the future holds for Bitcoin and the world of cryptocurrency in general.
Lots of possibilities.
It's a wild ride.
That's for sure.
So buckle up. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody.